X-Pac 12360. Featuring weekly news, insider commentary, and interviews with superstars, past and present from the world of pro wrestling.
A new day is dawning for DX.
And now, your host, Sean X-Pac Waltman.
Welcome back to X-Pac 12360. Dubbed the Boston Battler on the amateur wrestling scene, this iconic performer led the Dungeon of Doom, scored multiple titles at CWF and ECW, and attempted to cure fans' Hulkamania. He's been working in the sports entertainment biz for over 4 decades. Ask him why. The devil made him do it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prince of Darkness, Kevin Sullivan.
All right. Hell yeah.
Wow.
Hey, Kev.
How about
Thank
that?
you for that introduction. I can lay down and do anything I want, Sean.
Oh yeah. Hey man. Hey, you should have heard the one she gave Lanny Popo last. She even wrote a poem for Lanny Popo last week, Kevin.
You guys are the best. I want to say something right off the bat, okay?
Yes, sir.
I've known you for quite a while. I had the pleasure to work with you, and I just want to say, I want people out there to question some shit. Nobody knows history anymore. The 2 biggest groups in the history of wrestling were the NWO and the Generation X. What's the only common factor they have?
Let me think about it.
You, okay? I was lucky enough to be involved in the NWO from its origin, and I was lucky enough to ride with you and Kevin Scott. You know, I should have got bad pay when I rode with you, but a lot of people don't realize how brilliant you are.
I appreciate
and
you
where
saying
I'm
that,
going
Kevin.
is, if this is the election time of season, we got a president now that's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I definitely think that you need to be in the Hall of Fame. So, boys, in the WWE, if you hear me, put your pencils on a piece of paper, and X-Pac is the first guy who goes in.
Wait, thank you so much, Kevin. It means a lot
It's
to
the
me.
truth.
Man.
It's the
does.
truth.
I'm glad you
Let's
finally brought
figure
that up,
this out.
Kevin. I've always wanted to talk
Figure
about
this
that.
out, kids. Figure this out. Only 2 groups have controlled the wrestling business in over 25 years, and you're a member of both. It ain't, I'm no genius. I mean, that's common sense.
Well, it's, when you put yourself in the right place at the right time, Kevin, things like that, good shit happens. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into how I managed to pull a lot of that shit off.
Yeah, some of the reasons were you knew your position.
Yes.
You worked your ass off. You overperformed, and you knew your position so good with me in the NWO was I had Hercules. I had the Frankenstein monster.
Yep.
Then I had Dr. Frankenstein, meaning you, who controlled the monsters, but you were such a little bastard about it. Excuse my language.
You can use
I
whatever language you
shot
want.
at him, but I ain't going to mess with the other 2 in the camera and all
That's
this.
right.
You've given me too much credit sometimes, I heard. Brother, you guys were on top of things. It will never be that way again. And I shouldn't say never, but you guys were an anomaly that came along that hasn't been in the wrestling business before or since.
Amazing what can happen when you book fucking Heat on the Heels, Kevin.
Oh, yeah. Maybe they should have to have one guy that was a heel in their group somewhere. You know what I mean? It's like I said. One of the things that I started laughing knowing I was going to be with you today was I flashed back over 20 years ago, and we're doing promos, and you guys are coming in and you're doing the big good cop, bad cop, nasty Kevin, Scott trying to handle everything, and you being the politician. You know what I mean? And the baby faces run up to me and say, "They're working for Vince. They're working for Vince. They're beating us every night. They're beating us every night." I'm saying to myself, do these guys understand the guy they're talking to is the guy that's putting these guys over? I mean, you know, that's how much heat you guys had.
But here, the thing is eventually, Kevin, we gave it back to him.
And that's what I can't stand. I do some podcasts, and people say, "Oh, those guys weren't business." Okay, Charlotte, the Four Horsemen. You're laying in the middle of the ring, sold-out arena, and you're getting beat all three.
All three laying in the middle of the ring. And the whole time...
Yeah, in the middle of the ring.
Yes. Yep.
Rey Mysterio owes his life in the wrestling business to you guys. Kevin put him over. Scott put him over. You put him over.
Yeah.
I never had a problem ever coming to you guys and saying, "Oh, hey guys, what do you think?" Because I always like to give you guys like a week to think about stuff, because you guys were creative. But I never had anybody say, "Well, Lex Luger wouldn't do that," and that's like telling me this to me. You know what I mean? There wasn't anybody in the third person. Yeah, if that's what needs to be done, we'll do it. Even right or wrong, I knew you guys were. If I was wrong, we're going to make it so right. It made it look right.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah. And like we were saying, Kevin, it was the baby faces when we came into WCW. The baby faces pretty much were dead in the water. Like all the top money guys that they're getting paid the most, so you got to push those guys. They were fucking deader than shit, Kev.
Brother, here's the horrible thing. When you go into place, when you guys were coming in, and you were a breath of fresh air and getting over, and these guys that were getting paid and mailing their performance in were starting to get pushed by an outside entity, and they're saying, "Oh my God, I have to keep up with these guys.
Yeah,
I have to be smart in promos. I have to start working." They resented that because they thought, "Oh, the next thing is they'll have somebody take my job." It wasn't that they thought about, "Hey, let's perform with these guys to the highest ability we can so this company makes money." I think if they had really grasped that, maybe WCW would still be, an entity. Who knows?
But they were taught that, it was reinforced in them that this was like a fucking country club, and here it's almost free money, and you come in and you phone in your performance, and you get your paycheck every week, and it's the same paycheck, and there's no incentive to do better, or that's why Vince never gave guarantees before that, and.
Yeah, and I can, and here's the thing. Okay, when you guys left, they had a building guarantees for the WWE at the time, right?
Yes.
Because, so that says to me, he broke precedent, which he doesn't usually do. That's how important you guys were. And that's why I'm saying, people... I don't mean to knock anybody. They're better, they're faster, they're stronger, the athletes today.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't try to do what you guys were. That's like running a field and trying to catch lightning in a bottle. It doesn't happen again in 100 years. And I find that when the invasion angles and anybody trying to do an angle that involved whatever you guys were working with, whether it was the Generation X or the NWO, it's like the people don't even register to it. They say, "Oh, that's what Sean and Kevin did. That's what Sean and Hunter did." You can't follow something with the same thing. Is where I'm going.
Yeah, and it's always going to be compared, like you just said, Kevin. And here's the thing. I mean, who's going to come up with the new thing, with the newest thing like that hasn't been seen before? I mean, any ideas, Kev? How come? And I'm jumping around a lot here, Kevin. And I want to kind of get, and I want to, and that's just how I am. I'm all over the place when I talk to people. But, and this is kind of out of order. But why haven't you ever worked for WWE in a creative capacity? Because you're a fucking genius, Kevin.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I don't know if I am. But one thing is that I've been able to recall almost every incident in the wrestling business. Because, Sean, you probably don't even remember this. I remember the first time I ever met you. It was in the shower room in between the office in Tampa. You were training with Malenko. I was working in Japan, and someone tried to open up the Tampa office. So I have pretty good total recall.
Oh, wow.
So
holy shit.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you were a handsome young man, and we were talking, and you're like me, you're a wrestling fan, and you were starting to train with Malenko, or had finished training, I'm not sure.
No, I was still doing it.
But you told me you were from Minneapolis, and we got on pretty good. Only time I was talking to Vince quite a bit when Hogan got the belt the last time. We were talking almost every day, and I told him, "Listen, you're going to have Hogan lose. This is when he won the belt the last time. I gave him that finish,
right?
And I said to him, here's the thing: Hogan is Ali. We allowed Ali to win the last 6 fights without a knockout or TKO. We looked the other way because he's Muhammad Ali. I said, he's Hulk Hogan." And then I met with his daughter and Johnny Ace. They asked me to come down to meet him in Fort Lauderdale. I met them, and the first thing she says to me is, "I don't know anything you've done. What have you done in the wrestling business?" And I might have been a little bit of a smart ass, but I said, "Well, ask your father." You know what I mean?
Right.
So I never went any further than that. It's like you. You have an incredibly good head about the wrestling business. The reason why, not only are you a wrestling fan, you're around some of the smartest guys in the wrestling business.
Oh, amen to that, Kevin. You being one of them.
Well, I mean, you rode with Kevin and Scott. You learned not only the wrestling business, but the wrestling politics business.
Yep.
So you got, and then you were with Hunter, so you saw how this business works. I don't understand how they can get people that don't know anything about the history of the wrestling business and expect them to write something that makes sense.
I don't either, Kevin. I don't either, man. I'm still trying to figure it out, but that's the way they're doing it now, and it doesn't look like they're going to change that policy anytime soon. So how do we work within those parameters and try to make things as good as possible?
Here's the thing, and I've said this before. It isn't that they don't have the answer. They have a network with tapes.
Yeah.
Why doesn't somebody sit there, like a brilliant guy like you, and go over and say, "Oh, look at the Freebird angle they did in World Class with Junkyard Dog. Why don't we go back and look at the Mark Lewin angle with the Sheik out of Detroit? Why don't we go back at Paul Bosch and look at Wahoo and Johnny Valentine?" I know it sounds like we're digging people up from the grave, but what works still works.
I was just looking back before you came on and before we started production on this episode. I was looking at you and Dusty tapes from Florida, and you were when you threw the ink in Dusty's sister's eye.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some heavy stuff, man. Heavy stuff, Kevin. That's the stuff I grew up on. The first stuff that I was exposed to was you as a heel doing the whole Buddha Dean shit. It was amazing, man.
Let me tell you how that happened. Mark and I left Florida, and I lost the Loser League Town match to Dusty, and I went to work for Jimmy Crockett, and I worked the first Starcade, and I left right after I got paid. And Dusty had called me, knew I left. He gave me a guarantee. I came back, and the angle I came up with was back in the days before me, there was This Is Your Life, and we did This Is Your Life, Dusty.
Right.
But we also got Eddie Graham over because when I blinded his sister, Dusty and Eddie took a chance. Dusty was supposed to work that following Wednesday in Miami against Flair because that's what the ink was for, to sign the contract.
Right.
And Dusty went on strike. He wouldn't wrestle for Florida Championship Wrestling. I think they put Barry in there against Flair, and then they had.
What do you mean he went on? Kevin, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what do you mean Dusty went on strike as a shoot or as part of the angle?
Part of the story line. He went on strike. He wouldn't wrestle Flair until I was back into World Championship Wrestling because I was ixnayed, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So they had 5 people vote. It was 2-2, and Eddie broke the vote. Broke it. He said this one's for Dusty, and Dusty and I worked the following Saturday in Lakeland, and Dusty did the right thing, Sean. He put me over right in the middle of the ring.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Is that
we were off and running.
Now in Lakeland, is the next time you guys showed up in Lakeland, is that when you had Adrian Street as Dusty's partner?
On the return, I had Adrian Street as Dusty's partner, Yeah,
but that was huge business. That was a sellout in Lakeland. I remember it. I was there.
Yeah. And there was a guy, here's the thing. And I don't want to sound like, knock.
Right.
These guys are great. But cookie cutters, do you think Adrian Street, if he showed up in a wrestling office, or Dusty Rhodes showed up in a wrestling office in today's day, in their gimmick, would get a shot?
Of course not.
Okay.
Of course not.
So, I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest talkers of all time, talk people into.
Yeah.
He was the catalyst to make this angle with me work because he was the American Dream, and I was knocking the American Dream, and he was the driving force. Here's Adrian Street, and when I spiked, Dusty instead of Miss Linda, Dusty just knew. And like you do, if you know, you know. If you don't know, you just don't know.
That's right.
And as I get to be older and hopefully wiser, guys like you are the last link. You're around the Dusty Rhodes, the Terry Funks, the Ric Flairs. You work with these guys. You know how to draw money. But is anybody going to ask you, hey, you got, like I said, 2 of the biggest groups in the history of wrestling, and nobody calls you and says, hey, take a look at the state quality control, please. What do you think? You know what I mean? It just baffles me. It baffles me because how can you expect them not to call you and have a guy that knows nothing about wrestling write a wrestling segment?
Yeah, I know, Kevin. I know.
Does that make any sense? Am I?
It doesn't.
Am I kind of?
For me personally, when people ask me how come you're not there, I just know, and I'm only talking about me. And regardless of how much I know and what I have to offer, it's best that our relationship is where it is right now, because I don't think I could be there and play well with others in that kind of an environment. You know what I mean? That makes any sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was Stephanie's, when I closed the conversation with her, she said to me, "We hear you want your own way." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" She said, "If it came to Vince or you, what would you decide?" I said, "He writes the checks." You know what I mean?
Sure.
I got to go with the boss, okay? But that doesn't mean I'm just going to say, "Yeah, that's good." "Yeah, sure, Vince, that's good." I said, "If you want a yes man, I'm not the guy. If you want a guy to maybe stimulate his intellectual knowledge on the wrestling business, maybe I'm the guy." But I said, I'm not going to say, "You can't do this." It's his company, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's what they think about guys from our generation. We're going to do a 1960s sit-in. You know, give me a table, we'll get in the middle of the ring. There's no wrestling today, you know what I mean?
That's right.
Lay up a joint, you know?
That's right.
Pass it to the band. I don't know.
Me neither, Kevin.
It fascinates me that they can be this far off, yet they have everybody in the world under contract that has the last link of how to draw money. Yet they never call them in and say, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you. Can you give us 4 days or 3 days or 3 hours or whatever?" It just blows me away.
I'm gonna take a guess that they don't really want my opinion on a lot of things. I give it to them anyhow sometimes, and they listen to it, but they're never soliciting my fucking advice. I can promise you that, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, I think what I said before, and I think people are going to understand what I say and say, snap their head. It's right in front of them sometimes when they don't see it. You are in the two of the most successful groups in the history of all times. And not only that, you were successful as a single. Scott, I appreciate Scott, and I think he's a genius in the wrestling business. He saw something in you that nobody else saw, and he went out and put you over it. But everybody thinks you got put over the first week. Am I correct?
Yeah. No, yeah, people, they think that was my debut. Like, they don't know, you know, the whole backstory.
Yeah, they don't know the struggle.
Right.
And Scott saw that, and he said, "I can make money with this kid." So you need somebody like that, and, you know, you would see that now, too, because that knowledge was passed on to you. Right. And what you're trying to do is pass on knowledge to people who don't really deserve it and don't want it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
And you know, it's I don't really feel like wasting my time, Gavin, because, you know, and you're older than me, so you know this better than I do. There's not too much fucking time to waste anymore.
Oh,
you know?
Brother, every morning I get up, I say, "Hey, I got another day in," and exactly. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you know, hey, we're from that era where anything good happens, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, bingo 17. That's Kevin. Uh-oh, bingo 19.
Yeah.
That's Sean. You know, it didn't, now there's no time to waste. And I don't understand why they're wasting time.
I don't either.
You know what I mean?
Kevin.
That's what. Yes, sir.
Hey, I want to go back a little bit. And
okay.
Like I said, we're jumping around, but I want to go back to the San Francisco days. How long had you been in wrestling when you worked for Shires?
6 years.
And you start. Did you start in Boston, up in the Northeast area? Who trained you?
Well, I actually started in Montreal. Sean, this is a funny story. I started the Boston YMCA Union. I was an amateur wrestler. This guy came who was from South Africa. Said, "Do you ever think about becoming a professional wrestler?" I said, "Yeah, but I wouldn't know how to do it." We got be booked in Montreal, showed me some stuff, so I'm waiting for them to smart me up for the finish. They don't give me the finish, they screw the whole thing up.
Yeah.
His name was Bernard Fichette. You know, there was a guy that taught me. His name Pat Gerard was the local promoter.
Yeah.
he actually taught Pat Patterson. So I mean, there's a lineage there. So what happened was I learned up there, and then I started in Georgia, and then went to the Gulf Coast, and then up at Shires later on. Yeah.
So, but what group were you working for in Montreal when you started? Because there was there
was two groups.
Right.
There was two groups. Plus, they let this guy Pat Gerard, who has taught everybody, who was like years ago in the 80s when Honolulu was like a free state. They allowed you to work. One time, me and Mark worked against Fuji and
Tanaka?
Morocco, and
Oh,
they were
Morocco.
from the WWF, and we were from the NWA. So Pat Gerard ran every Sunday in Verdun. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, so how did that relate to the Hawaii stuff, Kev?
Oh, that didn't relate to the Hawaii stuff, but what I'm saying is they allowed both groups to wrestle there.
Yeah.
Because it was like paying Pat back, you know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
If you were off on a Sunday, you went and worked, almost like the Malenko deal when you were growing up.
Right.
In the business.
Yeah, but Malenko and Eddie Graham, Malenko and Eddie Graham, they had this feud in the late 60s into the early 70s that went like 4 or 5 years straight. But then Malenko had a big fallout, and like Malenko didn't have much nice to say about Eddie, to be honest with you. Besides, he put him over as being brilliant. He put him over as being, excellent in the ring. Great babyface, great seller, and all that. But he didn't like him as far as he didn't think he took care of him on the money. So, there was a huge.
Eddie didn't, and the other thing was, I had heard this, and the boys would know if this is true. He was supposed to give Malenko a percentage.
Probably should have, actually.
Yeah, and Malenko, he was the biggest star besides Dusty in the history of Florida Championship Wrestling. And he was working with Eddie, who was probably at the time neck and neck with Dusty's popularity.
Yeah.
But Malenko, I can see what happened there, and Eddie was paranoid because Malenko, I don't have to tell you, had that outgoing personality.
Yep.
People that would meet him would like him. Eddie was afraid that he would meet someone from the TV industry and they would give him a TV program.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day when it was the territories, they didn't even want you to rent the house, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Not even buy a house. They didn't want you to rent the house in case you were secretly buying it. And Malenko moved there and to Tampa because he had a family. He was a great, great guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the night I bumped into you was he came down, and if you remember, there was some guys trying to start a wrestling company in Florida, and they were running like 3 days a week. They called me over, and I was off from Japan, and Michael came, and I forget who I worked with, but he had the chain, and I think I worked with Kevin Windham, and he had the chain, and he got involved.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
But so, going back to San Francisco, Kevin, I was looking at some stuff, and it reminded me of your early feud with Bob Roop. Before you did remember he was a Star Warrior or a Star Raider or something, and then you did the stuff with the Nivek Navalis.
Yeah. I did this thing with Roop. What out there was where I just came in to beat his ass. He was part of my family. He wrestled my brother. He crippled my brother, and that was it. And then we carried it on where when we went to Florida, there was a bounty on Dusty's head, $5,000. It was by Nivek Navalis. And JJ, who doesn't get the credit he deserves as a great manager,
He's awesome.
goes, "Oh, I know who that is. It was that old-time German wrestler. It's Nivek Navalis is Kevin Sullivan backwards, you know what I mean?"
Yep.
So, yeah. But let me mention something. I'm going to be in L.A., and I hope you come and see us. And RVDs against Pentagon on that Pacific Coast Wrestling, and RVD and Pentagon. Have you ever worked with either one of them? I know you're RVD.
Yeah, RVD for sure. And I worked with Pentagon's. Yeah. I worked with. I'm dating myself right now. I worked with Pentagon's father.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I lived in Mexico for 4 years, Kevin. But hey, Kevin.
Wow.
Yeah, I did, man. Hey, did you ever wrestle down in Mexico?
I only wrestled in the border towns when I was in Southwest to Luke.
Yeah.
Luke was the booker in Southwest Championship Wrestling. Luke and I were good friends. So he would bring me in on weekends, and I'd work like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when I was kind of freelancing there for a while. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
So I
always wanted to work in Mexico. It's funny because where I really trained to wrestle was in Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
And I was the only Hispanic, I was the only non-Hispanic in the gym. Johnny Rods came from there, Victor Rivera, Pedro Morales, Carlos Colon, 234 Broadway upstairs. Yeah.
Damn, you can
So
remember the address. Holy shit.
Yeah, and I used to go to the luchador movies in Brooklyn at the time.
Oh, you used to watch the old
El Santo movies?
El Santo movies.
El Santos, Mill, you know?
Yeah. You would have gotten over big time down there. Yeah, you would have gotten over big time down there, especially as a heel and the way you work and the way you get over and, you know, how you know how to get heat. It would have been great. It would have been fantastic.
Thanks.
Because they still believe, Kev. They still believe down there.
Oh,
How
I know, yeah. And what?
Oh, I was just gonna say, when do you get to work for a crowd that still believes? I mean, you don't really find those that often anywhere. Mexico might be the last of that. So
you know that, and here's the thing that's sad, and you can testify this. You know, you guys get heat sometimes when there's no reason to get heat, meaning you, Kevin Scott, right? About the Goldberg thing. That was our goal. Okay? You guys know how to get right to it. You become super breathing dragons, and you know how to make the guy a knight rather than beating a salamander.
Right.
But I also think when you guys went out there, I'm going to say, hey, 75% of the people before they saw you guys knew it was bullshit. But it's like going to a movie. You don't know there's cameras there all of a sudden. You know, it's you guys getting over. I think that, hey, when I used to go to wrestling matches as a thing, I was an amateur wrestler for 10 years. I knew you couldn't bail a guy across the ring. And I thought it was all bullshit until I saw the Sheik.
Yeah.
The building actually moved when he came out against Spears Sarion. And Spears was the number 2 babyface, right?
Right.
After Bruno. And it was a 3-minute, and I'm, how can this be? This ain't fake. You know what I mean? And I think we all want that again, don't we?
I want to be fooled. I want desperately to be fooled, Kevin. You know, like yes, hell yeah. Like, please fool me. Please work the fuck out of me.
One of the biggest compliments I ever got was from you guys. When you guys told me that a group of you guys bought the pay-per-view to see me and Pillman.
Yeah.
Because you guys weren't sure.
No.
If my people weren't sure. Boy, he did he was incredible. And I'm going to ask you this question, okay?
Okay.
And I've asked Jim Ross, and when I asked Jim Ross, I knocked him back on his heels, okay?
Okay.
Do you think, without Brian Pillman, that Stone Cold would have been as extreme Stone Cold without Pillman?
Wow. I had a feeling you were going to go there. Like, it's about something about Steve, and I think Steve would probably say no. Steve gives. He's very good about giving Brian Pillman all the credit in the world. He deserves it, you know.
And I said this before in a lot of interviews. I said, not only did we lose a great performer, we lost a great mind like you. We lost a great mind. Could you imagine if they were talking about feuds, if Brian had lived? The first one would be Pillman Austin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they just started. They went so far over the top of gun. Most people say, oh, that's ridiculous. We're still talking about it, aren't we?
Yeah, and you know, like looking back on it, it wasn't really that over the top. I mean,
no,
not at all. I mean, nobody got shot. You know.
No,
so.
and you know that Brian's playing this thing that he's paranoid, fucking schizophrenic, whatever
Right.
it is, and you know you're into it, and we're still talking about it. So I actually, when I said to Jim that. It was a year ago at WrestleMania. He said to me, I think you're right. Without Pillman, he laid the groundwork to go that far.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And you guys laid the groundwork before, too.
Hey, whose idea was all that, Kevin? Was it yours, Pillman? Did you guys collaborate on it? Who came up with it?
I'd like to say it was all mine. It was Brian who came to me. But the funny thing was, I mean, Brian played it to the hilt, right?
Yeah.
And guys would come up to me and say, I hope you kick the shit out of that Pillman. And I see the same guys later on saying to Brian, I hope you kick the shit out of him. He called me, you know, late at night and said, hey, what did he say to you? I said, the same thing he said to you, Brian. And we would talk on the phone late at night, but we never talked in the building. We never got anywhere near where the boys could say they're working. You know what I mean? And I know it upset some people, you know what I mean? They weren't.
It didn't sit well with some of us in the locker room, but I think that was a good thing, Kevin.
Well, I also wanted to see, and I think Brian wanted to see, because if you remember, Brian, you know, he ended up getting 3 paychecks, one from Vince, one from us, and one from ECW. I think Brian wanted to test that character to see if it would work. And he figured out, let's play it close to the vest. I said, okay, put me in a little bit of a position, but I'll do it. And he was, you know,
it just seems like
Brian Pillman's fall out of the ceiling.
It also just seems like something that would be right up your alley. Knowing what I know about King Curtis and your just, you know, that's what I heard. I heard Curtis was that type of a guy, like would work the boys, you know, like and things like that. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, Curtis was the greatest talker of all times, I think, you know.
And Lanny Poffo said the same thing last week. He said something along those lines too. That Randy Savage got his oh yeah from King Curtis.
Yeah, and Curtis one time in Hawaii, there was a minute left to go on TV when they had local TV, and Ed Francis said, "Go out and count to 1." I mean, to minute 1. And Curtis started going 1, but he had his back turned.
Yeah. And
he turned on 2. He turned sideways on 3. It was the highest rated minute for the month on that television station. He was just a great talker, and I mean, I remember him. He would talk. He knew he was very smart. He graduated from UCLA as an orator, so he could really. You know, talk. And he knew about different countries, different cultures. And he'd be saying, I was walking the Milky Way in Singapore when I came upon a Buddha in a boogie street, and I climbed the 15th floor. It was all shit he actually did. You know what I mean?
Okay.
He lived an amazing, amazing life. But he used to say, you know, if you want to get heat, don't be out there so much, you know, like he was the one that I saw him grab a young kid that was a heel, going out and talking to people. He snatched him. This is back in the day. He said, don't sign those autographs. What are you, stupid? You're a heel. You want them paying to see you get your ass beat, not saying, oh, he's not a bad guy. He said, it'll travel like wildfire. So, I mean, it's again, I had good teachers, Curtis, Mark, Ken Lucas. I had guys that knew the wrestling history. So what we're talking about, here they have a group of guys like yourself from your era who are ready to go, and they're not saying, hey, is this, maybe, could you look at this? You know, it just baffles me. Again, I'm being redundant, but
no,
it does.
but as far as Curtis's philosophy, did he think that sometimes it was good to work the boys as well, to work the talent?
I think he thought that if he was so far out there, and he was sometimes,
right,
Sean, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? He was really out there sometimes on shit.
Sure. The beetle nut? Is he chewing a little too much on the beetle nut, Kevin?
Yeah. He was afraid that guys could tell that he was fucked up.
Right.
So he played that he was fucked up half the time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know if I can use that word. But
yeah, use whatever word you want.
He played that half the time so he didn't get guys saying, oh, Curtis is. So after a while, they kind of calmed down and said, oh, that's how he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it's just that.
Him and Mikey were way out there for a while.
Yeah. Boy, no kidding, right? Hey, Kevin, we have this video, and it's the video of you pulling Mark out of the water. Was that from outside your house in Daytona Beach? Is that where that was?
No, that was actually in Tampa, and we lucked out. That's when I was living in Tampa. We didn't know
were you on the Courtney Campbell Causeway?
Yeah. We didn't know it was going to be a full moon that night,
right.
And it was a full moon, and everything just worked out. That was really the first video ever shot in the wrestling business.
It was great. We're watching
one of the first.
We're watching it right now, Kevin. You can maybe hear yourself in the background. And now Mark is just coming up out of the water. And I remember watching this at 10 years old or around that age, and I was just like fucking in awe, man. This is just classic
Mark
stuff.
was a specimen, too, and he knew how to get heat.
He sure did. He didn't do a whole lot of wrestling, Kevin. He did a lot of...
No, he didn't.
But
and yet, he was one of the greatest baby faces of all times.
Yeah.
He had psychology. He was Argentina's Blanca's partner when he was 16. Sean, in 1953, Mark made $126,000.
Wow.
At 16 years old.
Wow. Well, he looked amazing.
Wow,
and don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't he live by you out in Seattle right now?
He lives in one of the other islands.
Right.
Part of the year, and he lives in Singapore most of the year. He's 80 and he's still squatting 400 pounds. He's,
holy shit.
You know, A to Z. He's still A to Z.
Yeah.
And he's 80.
A to the Z.
So.
Wow, man. Yeah. Hey, how can you argue at what he's doing? It seems to be working for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit. Wow, man. Hey, Kevin, my co-host and my producer Jimbo here, I'm sure have some questions they're dying to ask you. And they've been very patient as I've been just shooting the shit with you here. You mind if they ask you a few?
Oh, of course not.
Thanks.
It's been great to be with you. I appreciate it.
Well,
Jimbo.
Since you mentioned PCW, and I know you have an upcoming seminar there, Saturday, November 12th, starting at 2 to 4:30 at the Oak Street Gym in Torrance, California. And I just wanted to know, like, what are some of the things you look for when you do these seminars? Because I know you get to pick 2 students from the seminar to actually wrestle on the show.
Well, I have a different take on it. It's like, and I'm sure Sean knows where I'm going with this. If you're going to steal something from somebody, don't do it on the same show as them. You know what I mean? I want to see, okay, everybody can flip and flop, and it's great, and this is what the audience wants today. But there's still psychology involved in it, and maybe you go to do it one time and you don't do it. You don't give them everything, you know, it's like you take a girl to dinner, you know, you wine and dine her, you put the music on. I mean, there's a ritual to this, and there's a ritual to wrestling, and there's a ritual to get heat, and there's a ritual to make a comeback. And if you don't know it, you're just doing it. You're just doing the act to do the act. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it seems like your seminar is going to be really like psychology driven of like why you do these things, as opposed to like, all right, everybody get in the ring, do a bunch of squats. All right, now everybody go over here, do a bunch of this.
Yeah. And the other thing is they're sold out already. If you look on their website, they're going next in January. The next show is January 14th, I believe, or the 20th. I have to look back, but they go into another building and they get a huge event, and they get $75 tickets, and they're all sold out. They get $50 tickets, all sold out. $35 tickets, and they got that match that nobody's seen. So, to me, this is maybe a rejuvenation independent wrestling. If you give it to them, maybe, the old thing about Field of Dreams on a baseball fan. If you build it, they will come. And it seems that they've built it in the Pacific Wrestling, Pacific Coast Wrestling seems to have built the road to get there.
Cool. Absolutely. Well, what do you think of the young talent that's out there on the indie scene?
Oh, they're so much better. We were. They're physically better.
They really are, Kevin. They fucking really are, man. Just to be honest with you, when it comes to what you're saying, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Sean's a generation and a half behind me. And I hate guys of my generation that say, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're going to outwork us. First 2 minutes, we couldn't keep up if we did 48 minutes. With Sean, it's a different story. But these kids know how to perform. But I've seen shitty movies with Jack Nicholson with a horrible director. And Jack Nicholson is the best I know.
Yep.
Unless you have somebody directing these people, or and the young kids can't learn. It's like, I'm going to say something that I haven't really said before, and I think I should.
Yep.
When I would go to these guys, when I would go to you and Kevin Scott, I didn't have to ask, what do you want to do? I knew where we were going. And, we talk about it. When they said, don't use baseball bats,
I was just
my head, yes.
Yeah, if you weren't going to bring that up, I was going to. Can you tell them about that one?
Okay, we had this big thing in Disney.
This was great.
Where they attacked, the NWO attacked WCW. And Disney actually got calls, and the police came because they thought it was a shoot. The Dungeon of Doom was wrestling a horseman. The NWO hit behind the scenes. Kevin picked up Rey Mysterio like a dart, threw him in. Sean was on somebody. Scott was on. They were just nailing guys. Jimmy Hart runs down, tells us there's a fight in the back. We leave together, the heels and babyfaces. We start fighting them, and they're beating us up with ball bats. So when I had to get it approved, they said, everything you got is good except the ball bats. So I handed the boys the ball bats, and I said, whatever you do, do not use the ball bats. So I'm giving them the ball bats. I'm shaking my head, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, he's going like this. He's going, don't use the ball bats, as the whole time he's shaking his fucking head, like it's, in other words, use the ball bats, Because what are they going to do? It's fucking live.
Yeah, and, so you guys, when I would come in, I didn't have to ask you, what are we going to do? This is what I got planned. We were on the same page because we believed in heat, and we also knew, I remember, was it Kevin or Scott or you that put Gaza over one time, and you weren't supposed to?
That's something Scott would have done.
Yeah, and I came to Scott and I said, why Gaza? He said, because they didn't think it would happen. I said, how can I chastise that, right?
Right.
He threw something and made a guy, and he made him where he meant something. You know what I mean?
He did it to Jericho, too, one time.
Yeah. And somebody that really deserved the break, that worked hard, suffered.
Yeah, well, Scott, it worked with me. I mean, and it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt him. So, Scott realized like you could do things like that, and if you know, did it really affect anything? Did him dropping one Garza, did it fucking hurt did we draw any less because of that? I don't think so.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you know, I love Scott. I mean, Scott used to tell me he used to watch me when he was a kid, and he'd say, I hated you so bad because you'd say, Andre, I worked with Andre in Orlando, and he killed me, right?
Yeah.
Juicing in my boots, the whole thing. And the people get their pop, and the next day I'd be on TV with tape all over my head saying, I ran that giant out of town. I'm the only giant here, and Scott got it.
Right.
Early. Someone pulled like you got it early.
Yeah.
Kevin got it early. Someone turned on the light and said, okay, this is fake. I need to make money. How do I do it with the most credibility I can so people will keep coming back? And that's what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it about putting asses in seats? And I think they forgot about that. I think these kids, this is the only thing I'm going to knock them on, okay? I think they're like painters, and I paint a little, so I know. Okay. I think they're painters that think they're the next Georgia O'Keeffe as the girls, or they think they're next Van Gogh. I'm just going to cut off my hair at Christmas, but they're just, you know what I mean? You don't have any background to say that. You know what I mean? Until they have guys around that have been in the business and grew up in the business that were around, like you were, around Malenko's, and Scott was around Eddie Graham and Dusty Rhodes and different people. I think we're going back into what we've said about how do they figure they're going to right this thing, the ship, if every year the ratings go down?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the answer, Kevin. And you know, it sucks when you have to admit like you don't have the first fucking clue what it's going to take to change that. You know?
I think it's just letting wrestlers be them and just like the characters come out of people. Like, you never had anyone write your promos, and your promos are insane. And like when we brought up to people that we were interviewing you this week, the first words out of their mouth was like, Kevin Sullivan is crazy. That man is crazy.
Yeah.
And like you came
across,
no,
I just talked to him yesterday.
Yeah, like
really
you came
nice.
across so believable that like to this day people still think like you're the devil. And
people in the state of Florida, people in the state of Florida still believe in Kevin Sullivan. I can fucking promise you that. I grew up. Hey Kevin, you know what this question I wanted to ask you, because you know that all that like you're like the whole your whole Sullivan army, you know, that you know when you had Roop and Purple Haze and all that. You know, the production values for championship wrestling from Florida were what they were, but the content was so fucking good and so hardcore that it was like it came off hardcore. I noticed that when you did the Dungeon of Doom in WCW, it just didn't come off as hardcore as it did in Florida. Do you think sometimes shit gets overproduced?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why that came that way, Sean. Hogan got me the book.
Yeah.
It was before you guys came there. He came to me in Germany and said, can you take us there? I said, absolutely. So I had to turn him heel. You remember the struggle I had with him.
Yeah.
You know, I said, well, he's got to turn, guys. He's got to turn with you. And I always say how gracious you guys were with those black and white interviews where you could have buried him, especially Kevin, who was not a big fan of Hulks at the time, because 2 months earlier he told me he was going to strip him naked, beat him up in a pay-per-view in a cage match. Didn't sit well with me for a few nights. So I got the match booked already. So I know I got to turn him heel. So I said to myself, how do I turn him heel? I have to gain his trust. And he sent all his friends, Brutus, One Man Gang, the Shark, you know, all that. And I said, okay, I'm going to tune this up as much as I can to gain his trust because he's used to working with, you know, cartoon characters in the WWF at the time.
Right.
And as I started gaining his trust, there was one night in Chicago when he came out in the building, booed him out of the building, but he's dressed in black. And Gene Oakland, the genius in his ears, caught it and said, "You can hear the somber mood tonight. The people are booing the NWO as Hogan's coming out." And if he didn't turn heel that night, he stayed in my house the night I turned him.
Right.
And he can tell you anything he wants to say. He stayed in my house. Peter Young, his agent, slept in my couch because I wouldn't let him sleep in an extra bedroom.
Yeah.
Because he's driving me crazy about not turning him heel. Brother, and you guys were so good to him because he was not hip at the time.
Smart enough to know what was hip, though. Smart enough to know hip when he saw it, though.
Yeah, he did. I got to give him credit.
Yeah.
I got to give him credit, but I got to give you guys credit because the truth of the matter is, you guys could have buried him on those black and white interviews. And Kevin took it down a notch. You were like the orchestrator.
It wouldn't have been very good business for us to do that, though, Kevin.
No, but not many people in your time, in your position, understand what's good for business. Most guys are just thinking what's good for themselves.
Yeah.
And you guys saw the big picture, which was so nice to work with you guys, because you saw the big picture. If I came in and said, Pac, I need you to do a job tonight, Scott would say, "No, beat me."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's how he would say it, too.
Between the threes, it don't beat me so bad, I have to say, okay, let's work something out. I mean, it was easy. It was easy because you saw it wasn't real. It was your check.
Yeah.
And Hogan didn't see it. He saw the check, but he wanted to win every match.
He did, yeah. He did like to win.
He didn't have the security in his work like you guys did. I could have beaten you for 12 weeks on TV, and then on the 13th week you do something horrible. And it wouldn't have mattered the 12 weeks before. You couldn't beat Hulk for 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
Kevin, what is your relationship like with Hulk Hogan now? Do you speak to him?
Oh, it's pretty good. I talk to Hulk. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, he was what made wrestling. Let's face it, I don't think the president-elect who's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame would have been there if there was no Hulk Hogan, right? If Hulk Hogan didn't come along, Donald Trump would have been in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Huh.
Don't you think that, Sean, that he transcended wrestling from regional to national and Rock's the #1 movie star? Jesse's been governor. I mean,
I was just saying earlier. I was saying earlier before you came on, Kevin, that it was the WWE universe, aka wrestling fans, that put Donald Trump in the White House.
Absolutely.
Yep. And
I mean, that's why Rock's the #1 movie star. I happen to think he's very good, but it's the wrestling fans that carry the load.
Yeah, it's definitely wrestling. Wrestling is and that's the sum I was saying earlier. It's good to be associated with the wrestling industry these days, Kevin.
Yeah.
Remember when it wasn't?
I think you should come out here, and you and I will run for emperor of the islands out here.
Let's do it.
The San Juans will be emperors.
Hell yes.
Of the San Juans. I love it.
Hey, Kevin.
I vote for you guys.
Kevin, there was this one time. I'm going to see if you remember this. I'm pretty sure you do. You have a good memory, but I'll see if you know. Anyways, let me just tell you. One time, Hulk and Eric missed TV, and they were with Rodman somewhere, and there was a pay-per-view coming up, and anyways, Kevin and I, Scott was in rehab. Kevin and I weren't happy with how things went, and we went on live TV, went onto the set, and Kevin grabbed the mic, and we went into business for ourselves and started talking and got pissed off and, you know, all this shit. But anyways, the next day when I got home, I got a call from Eric, and, you know, he asked me, because I was the good cop now because Scott was in rehab, you know, and I needed to be the one that kept Kevin under control. So I told him everything that we were pissed off about, and it had to do with how you guys did something, you and Arn, or anyways. Regardless, apparently you were on the phone on the line the whole time I was saying all this, and Eric, after the conversation was done, Eric called me back and told me that he had you on the line without me knowing, just because he wanted you to hear everything I had to say. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah. And it was no big deal. It was no big deal. And I went and told Eric, yeah, they got a fucking bitch.
Right.
And I understand. You know what I mean? You guys didn't show up. Of course they're going to take it out of me.
Yeah.
I'm the surrogate Eric, so I understand what was going on. I mean, when you take that job, you got to realize your friends sometimes are going to be pissed off at you.
Yeah.
And especially if you're the surrogate, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You weren't going to tell Eric who's writing your checks, you know. So it was no problem with me. There was never a problem with me.
Well, Eric called me back like 5 minutes later and goes, I just wanted to tell you Kevin was on the line the whole time. I just didn't want to lie to you. So, you know, people could say what they want about Eric, but he's a straight shooter.
Yeah, you know, I absolutely, there was a time Eric could have let me go and didn't, and I appreciate it to this day.
Yeah.
You know, I was going through a very difficult time in my life, and he's a straight shooter. I admire Eric, yeah.
Cool. I was wondering, I never had a chance, because I was going to ask you about that in private, but hell with it. I might as well have asked you now. So
That's
I always
how we
want
do.
to know. I always want to know if you knew that I knew that you were on the line.
Yeah, I knew you knew. He told me. Yeah.
Oh shit, that was some crazy stuff, man. But Kevin, you know, we've kept you a while. I could keep on talking to you about different things, man. But I don't want to keep you.
You guys will talk.
I appreciate your time, man. Anything else you want to like plug besides the stuff this weekend?
No, I've also doing some stuff for Ring of Honor. Have you
That's
seen
right.
the Jay Briscoe and Jay Lethal match, Sean? I like your opinion on it. I think it's one of the best matches I've seen in 30 years.
See, well, I'm a huge fan of both of those guys. I'm definitely going to check it out.
I'm a huge fan of them. It was on a pay-per-view a couple shows ago. They're great performers, but hey, this Saturday, hopefully I'll see you in LA, and it's Pentagon and against RVD, and RVD's a friend of ours, so
yes,
it should be interesting, huh?
Yeah, hell yes.
Yeah.
Hey, does anybody else have anything for Kevin before we let him go?
No.
I mean, you talk about trying to convince Hogan to turn so much. I know Sting was like the backup if Hogan didn't want to do it. Was Sting that hard to convince, or like did you have him ready to go on the back burner in case Hogan said no, that you guys were going to turn Sting heel?
Hogan was, that is the rumor of 25 years. I had a backup plan, and it was in my pocket. Hogan was going to turn, whether he wanted to or not. I'm from South Boston. I'm from South Boston.
Fuck
you
yeah,
ever see
Kevin.
Black Mass? I have relatives besides Whitey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was going to turn.
That's.
I would have got Big Kev on him. So he was going to turn.
Thank God for that. Well, Kevin, thank you so much, man.
Sean, thank you, and thank you, all you production people. Thank you very much. It really made me feel welcome. Thank you.
Well, you're one of my very favorites, man, ever, Kevin. And I'm really honored that you joined us. Thank you so much, man.
Anytime, and you're one of my favorites too, Sean, if you know that.
Thanks, man. Have a great day, Kevin.
Great talking to you. We'll see you this weekend.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Oh, that was awesome. And we will be back with more X-Pac 12360 on AfterBuzz TV.
Hey guys, Maria Menounos here. We want to let you know about my new show on SiriusXM Stars Channel 109. It's called Conversations with Maria, and it's live Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Go to conversationswithmaria.com for more info. Buzz you later.
We are back on X-Pac 12360. Just chatted with Kevin Sullivan, and man, it was a good one.
You liked it?
Yes,
yeah,
very
me
much
too.
so.
Me too.
Very much so. As we all were kind of taking off our headphones in between right after, we were saying, man, you guys could have gone for another hour or two.
Well, I guess I could say this, what a lot of the guys and ladies we've had on the show, or lady, I could talk to these folks forever, whether it be on the phone and I don't even like the phone, but when it comes to that kind of shit, 2-3 hours.
We know you don't.
Well, 2-3 hours would go by and like that. So that was just a real treat for me, even if everyone else didn't like it.
I'm sure
Well, we did.
Yeah.
Fear not.
I grew up on that shit. I just spilt
it's
an
empty.
coffee cup.
We're good.
Everyone.
We're good this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well,
folks.
I'm really looking forward to meeting Kevin in person this weekend, and I hope everybody else comes out to
He's
Torrance and
awesome.
checks it out.
It's just and I would highly recommend all the would be aspiring professional wrestlers out there to take Kevin's seminar. Yes, because you can take a lot of seminars, on how to do wrestling moves and all of that, but you're not going to get very many where you can sit under a learning tree like Kevin Sullivan's.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Learning tree of woe.
That's great.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Well, I sat and watched the seminar that they did at the last show with Mr. 405.
450.
Mr. 450. That's what I almost said first. Why did I say 05? And it's just interesting to see these aspiring wrestlers go so hard and they want to impress. And I can almost kind of pick up on some of the wisdom stuff just listening to these guys and watching them work. So it's cool. I hope people come out and just watch too.
I do too.
Yeah, it's Saturday the 12th in Torrance, California at the Oak Street Gym from 2 to 4:30. The other matches on the card itself, the main event is RVD versus Pentagon Jr. for the Pacific Coast Wrestling Championship. There's Scorpio Sky versus Mr. Athletic Jeff Cobb, who's also Matanza.
I love Scorpio Sky.
So
He's
good.
great.
Me too. He put me in a rear naked chokehold at the last show.
Yes. The Samoan Werewolf Jr. fought 2 against Douglas James. The Reno Scum versus Keepers of the Faith. You know
Love
them
Keepers
from
of the Faith. Those are my boys. Hey guys.
Kevin Matterson versus Hammerstone. The Sheik and Kevin Sullivan will both be there, and Wooly Mack versus Ryan Taylor.
All right, some Willie Mack.
Too.
Yeah, so they're really doing it. They're packing the house. They're following like a good formula. PCW is really doing it correctly. They have. That's the biggest thing is like when like showing up to a show you're going to wrestle at and there's like 10 people there, wrestlers are like, what the hell? Because then they're worried about like if their promoter's going to stiff them or like if they're going to make any money and what else is going to happen. And they just flew 5 hours to get here to wrestle in front of 10 people. But like when you show up and it's like, no, we sold out. There's going to be 500 people here and they're already waiting to see the show.
The ring looks nice. They probably have a nice little set like entrance
they got
and
banners
shit like that.
and lighting.
Dude.
Like
This
they're
was
on point.
The first indie company I ever worked for, and it really like set a precedent in my mind, and I kind of had a little bit of shock when I went on to the next ones.
Yeah.
Heading out there, and I'm like, oh, there's not 500 people here.
They have like masseuse and catering for the boys. Like you can go there and get like a sports rub before your match and everything. Like they're really doing it. They're making sure.
Sports rub. Yeah, right. Whatever.
Oh, it's this like cute little old guy.
Get the sports rub one out.
Well, I will keep you all posted about what goes on backstage at PCW this weekend. Thank you so much for checking out the show today. You guys can always keep up with the show on Facebook, Instagram. We are at facebook.com/X-Pac12360 show and at X-Pac12360 on Instagram. We are going to have Gangrel, the Vampire Warrior, in studio next week on the show. It promises to be very scary and very good. I'm looking forward to it. And in the meantime, you guys can always hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at Christy Reports. I love to hear from you. Let me know what you think about the show, and let me know if you have any ideas for that intro for Gangrel, because, you know, I got a lot going on. Jimbo, where can they hit you up at?
Follow me on Twitter at Jimbo in the Booth. Buy my documentary, The Young Bucks 2 Sweet Journey, at highspots.com, and say hello to me at PCW this weekend. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Christy, how you got all that out without coming up for air is beyond me, but it was very good.
Well, thank you, sir.
Anyways, I guess you can follow me on Twitter at The Real X-Pac. I spit that out finally. Sorry. Anyways, thank you guys. Great job. And Gangrel, I started wrestling with Gangrel. We went to wrestling school together. And hey, don't we have a nice little video surprise for him? Remember I showed you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to be so embarrassed. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Excited for this.
It's funny.
Well, make sure you tune in for that next week on AfterBuzz TV. This has been X-Pac 12360. I will let the man take us out.
You all have a great one, and we'll see you next week right here. Christy already said this on AfterBuzz TV.
Adios.
See ya.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Phil Svitek, Kevin Undergaro, show producer Jimbo Frank, managing editor of AfterBuzz Wrestling Christy Olson, and managing producer of AfterBuzz Wrestling Mark Bidonica, and the entire X-Pac 12360 staff, we would like to thank you for tuning in. Feel free to like us on Facebook, rate and comment on iTunes and YouTube, follow X-Pac on Twitter at TheRealXpac, and email us at xpac12360show@gmail.com. This has been a presentation of the AfterBuzz TV Network. Buzz you later!